Alright everyone, James back with another video, and today we get to talk about The Witcher, but not the books for once. We are talking now the Netflix adaptation of The Witcher series by Andrzej Sapkowski. And there's been a lot of new developments. It's been a while since I've mentioned or talked about the Witcher adaptation here on this channel. And there's a reason for that. So if you go back and see my first video on the topic, I was very, very hesitant, bordering on, this doesn't look great to me, you know. I didn't have a lot of information at the time. None of us did. This video that I made was in response to very early news coming out of the development camp. When the show first sort of went into production, we were getting casting news, we were getting crew news, we were getting kind of little drips and drabs. And I did a video after the sort of first wave of announcements where Henry Cavill was announced as Geralt and Anya Chalotra was announced as... Is it Anya Chopra or Anya Chalotra? I don't know. I apologise. I'll look it up at some point, and from now on we'll do well. And Freya Allen was announced as Ciri. So we had our three leads, and we had our showrunners, and some behind-the-scenes crew. And I kind of just went on like an IMDb dive of these people, see kind of what their work was like. Is it something that I thought, oh, is there going to be confidence here? And I was very nervous, to say the least. I didn't really get Henry Cavill as Geralt. I figured this is a stunt casting, you know, they're getting a big Hollywood name because they want it to, you know, grab headlines and that kind of stuff. And then we got like an image of Henry Cavill in an early Witcher makeup test, and it looked real bad. And that made me nervous. And for a while I thought, okay, you know, is my hesitation going to have to lead to me being negative about this series? And I was kind of down on it for a little while. But I've come around to the idea, you know, over time, talking with other people on Twitter, talking with, you know, some of the friends in my real life, and sort of seeing more of what this crew and this cast were doing with the adaptation of The Witcher. It's left me feeling a lot more confident and hopeful. And that leads us up to now, where San Diego Comic-Con is in full swing. There was a whole Witcher event, lots of cast interviews and crew interviews, and a trailer. We got a trailer for the Witcher series, and I think it looked pretty damn good. That's probably a controversial opinion. This fan base has become quite split. But I think I'm now leaning more towards the positive side. And that really comes from just giving it time. And I think that's sort of the point that I want to make, is when you're looking at a show that's going to be adapted, like especially now, because there's going to be a lot of fantasy adaptations coming, it's very easy to feel negative about them going in. But I encourage everyone just to take a wait and see approach with all this stuff, because we can speculate and wiki dive and IMDb dive all day long to our heart's content, but it won't tell you the truth about what you're going to get. Like Chernobyl is the most lauded show right now, and the creator of that show before Chernobyl came out just worked on garbage. So, you know, the past cannot always predict the future, and I think I was guilty of sort of being a bit of a negative Nancy about it, because my Witcher fanboy feelings were hurt because it wasn't going to be my perfect vision of whatever. But now seeing what they've done, I'm a lot more optimistic. I think a lot of the stuff in the trailer looked really great. Henry Cavill looks really convincing as Geralt now. Like the makeup test they released back in the day, I think was like a real big marketing gap on behalf of Netflix. I have this feeling now that Netflix, like marketing guys, like, okay, we've got Henry Cavill, people are chomping at the bit for like images of him. Let's release this makeup test, and it's like, it's not a good idea to try and hype your show based on early production stuff, because that stuff is your first impression, and if you spunk away your first impression on something that was a rough draft, it's going to get negativity because it was a rough draft. The finished product, what we're starting to see now, looks a lot more put together and more cohesive. The visual look of the show, I think from the trailers, it looks very... Like, this was one of the problems that I had, because it looks kind of Game of Thronesy, and I don't know if that is because the production team that did the trailer editing kind of wanted to highlight bits that made it look more like Game of Thrones, but I know they have one of the cinematographers that worked on Game of Thrones on the crew. They have the language guy from Game of Thrones on the crew. Apparently they have the sword trainer from Game of Thrones on the crew. So a lot of that still leaves me kind of hesitant. The showrunner has come out and like said flat out, you know, we don't want to be the next Game of Thrones. It's not what we're trying to do. And I have more confidence in the things that she's saying now. Like, I've heard her talk about the series, and I've heard Henry Cavill talk about the series, and they both seem to understand this franchise from the same kind of perspective that I do, if that makes sense. Like, they share opinions about the books that I have, and that gives me confidence that they're going to approach it from an angle that I'm going to be okay with. I still have some reservations about things that they were trying to show off. So from the trailer itself, I will link it below if you haven't seen it. I'm not going to insert clips and images from it because I don't have the editing chops to do it. But basically, we see a lot of hodgepodge scenes thrown together to create a kind of atmosphere. Like, the tone the trailer was going for is not a very Witcher tone, in my opinion. There was a lot of action scenes going on with Geralt, which is fine, but Geralt as a character is much more than just the physicality of him being a Witcher. You know, it's more about his mentality and stuff, and I get you can't really show that kind of stuff in a trailer, especially a teaser trailer that's trying to give a vertical slice of what things are about. I think a lot of the clips they chose for the trailer, especially for Ciri, tried to highlight this mystical Destiny Child thing going on. She's not in a girl band, but she is a Destiny's Child. You know, I feel like they were trying to highlight some of that stuff, really leaning on that chosen one trope and building it in that way. And I don't know if it may just be like the marketing team would make a trailer. This is kind of the vibe. Like, these are the kind of a very basic outline of what we want to put across. And they kind of chose clips to highlight those things. And whilst Ciri's destiny as this sort of child of fate is important to her character, it's not the true core of her character, in my opinion. So I would have liked to see them take a different tact with Ciri. I hope that the show doesn't like strip away some more of the down-to-earth nature of Ciri, and I hope it has the guts to subvert expectations. I know that's kind of a dirty word now because of Game of Thrones, but I hope it has the guts to subvert the expectations in the way that the Witcher books do subvert expectations about these sorts of tropes. And obviously, listening to Henry Cavill talk at Comic-Con actually gave me a lot of hope that you know, he at least understands that is kind of what the books were trying to do, was to take these fantasy tropes and play with them in a way that would you know, bounce off of and be expressed through themes and ideas that we can sort of see parallels to in the real world. And Yeah, I mean, Henry Cavill seems like a guy who gets it to me now. And now I understand, like, when he was saying, he's a big Witcher fan, it wasn't just marketing spiel. Maybe there's still some of that in him, but I get that he understands this. Like, he is a fan of this franchise, and he has an understanding of the character that gives me confidence that he at least could share that knowledge with the showrunners and the other people, because I know Anya and Freya, they weren't sort of aware of the series going in. But I think that's good, man. Like, I think when you're adapting a show like this, it's a hard franchise to adapt, and they have really, like, they have weight against them already, because The Wild Hunt Witcher 3 is a mega smash hit, and that is an adaptation of the same works, so people are inevitably not only going to be comparing the show to the books, but they're going to be comparing the visuals of the show and the feel of the show to the already successful adaptation that they are familiar with and they love. So you're sort of trying to now play to two different fan bases that are already pre-established, but also new people. So you have to try and balance the familiar with things that you want to do for yourself, and in terms of adapting it in your own way. But I like what they're doing. I can now see, like, I could speculate to high heaven how they were going to adapt things, but now that I have a bit more material to go on, I can see elements from the books that I recognise, and that tickles my little fanboy brain. You're like, oh, I recognise this. This is that scene where this happens, and this is that character. That's interesting. I get that kind of stuff from it. It sort of plays to me as an existing fan, but trying to look at it with fresh eyes, I can also see some of the, like, just through some of the scenes, like, I know there's been a little bit of pushback against this trailer in particular because, as I say, it's a vertical slice of things, so we're getting tastes of all different kind of things, and The Witcher is one of those series that's kind of it's a little bit messy in terms of bouncing between different kind of backdrops. We have these more cloak and dagger moments where it's like back alley brawls, and we have these mystical energies and stuff, and it is going to be very difficult in a trailer to put those things together and make it feel coherent as its own story when you're cutting between them so quickly. So what I tried to do when I watched the trailer was, take each individual scene and see, how would this fit into a bigger narrative, away from the scenes that it's immediately next to in this trailer, because you can cut from Geralt fighting a monster in a hallway to Yennefer in a room surrounded by sorceresses, and those two things don't really mesh in a trailer because they're two very different tones of scene, but they are all part of The Witcher. And I didn't feel like any one scene stood out and I was like, this doesn't look like The Witcher to me, or this scene doesn't feel like it could be part of The Witcher to me. I could talk about the trailer structure and how this scene doesn't really work next to the scene we just saw, but trying to look at it in terms of trying to sort of piece together what they're going for, I really liked what I was seeing. Visually, it looked really impressive for the most part. There was a little bit of wonky CGI in there. Henry Cavill's $5 wig kind of shone through in one particular shot where his hair's all frazzled, and it was like, that doesn't look the best. But these are isolated incidents in a whole, and as somebody who's very familiar with the series, as I say, it gets me sort of itching to see, this is that I recognise. And I also saw things that I understand from the lore that they are fleshing out more, and I can see. I can try and sort of use my brain as a fan of storytelling, you know, to try and see, okay, so this scene is, you know, what they've done in this scene, what they've taken from the books is being presented in this way, and like what purpose does that serve in the medium that they've chosen to present it in, you know? We got to see in the trailer some clips from Yennefer, like as a sort of mutated hunchback, like twisted, like basically, if you aren't familiar, like, you know, Yennefer is a character who is a sorceress who made herself beautiful by way of magic. But we get now in this trailer, we get some glimpses of like that upbringing. You don't see that in the books. It's kind of hinted at and suggested at in the books, but I think like in terms of a visual medium, you are gonna have to get outside of the characters' heads a lot more. And this was a thing with the Game of Thrones adaptation as well. Like a lot of characters in A Song of Ice and Fire, like especially Sansa and Catelyn Stark, you know, a lot of those characters' big things are very internal, and it's hard to adapt those things to a visual medium, because you can't just have a character sitting and staring into space having a thought on screen. You have to show something. So I'm glad that rather than having like exposition where Geralt's like, oh, you used to be a hunchback, bro. Like, instead of having that, you get to see sort of Yennefer's development, and I'm interested to explore more of those parts of her character that we don't get to see a lot of in the books, and that's really one of the strengths of adaptations, I think, that you can get, and something I'm excited for this show in particular, because I love The Witcher. I love all of the lore and the content from it, from everything I've seen of it. Maybe not the Polish TV show, but you know, that's another story. I'm now sort of, you know, I'm more on the very slightly hesitantly excited train for this adaptation now. I'm interested to see the way they go about it. I want to see what they bring to the table. And yeah, I'm feeling positive about it, and that's really all I have to say. So if you are excited about the Witcher trailer, leave a comment. If you think it looked like garbage, leave a comment. You can tell me I'm wrong. You can tell me whatever you like. Comments are open for you for that very reason. So that's it for me for now. I'll see you in the next video, and yeah, like, subscribe, all the rest of it. Bye.